I need to start this video by giving a bit of context for people watching who are not from the UK. Preston is a small city in the northwest of England. It grew very quickly during the 19th century as part of the Industrial Revolution. It's one of those kind of mill towns that you're probably familiar with. It has declined since then, but it's still a fairly vibrant city. Okay, the contrast I want to make is between Preston and nearby Liverpool. Now, Liverpool is a port city. It's always been much more open to the world. It's had a lot of comings and goings, transatlantic influences from America, and it has always been a bigger city than Preston. Okay, now, all quiet on the Preston front. This is basically a story about what it was like as a journalist working in television when you had to get what we call a vox pop. Now, a vox pop is you go out on the street of a certain place with a camera crew, you stop people in the street and you ask for their reaction to something that's in the day's news. And it was pretty broadly understood as the journalists in the newsroom. We pretty much knew that if you wanted a good vox pop really quickly, go to Liverpool, right? Go to Liverpool because people there were just more extrovert. They were just more gobby. They were funny in a way that go to Preston, it was like pulling teeth. In fact, one sports reporter I worked with said, "Oh, it's so difficult." He said, you stop someone in the street and you ask them what you think is a straightforward question like, what do you think of Preston North End's new manager? Right? And they react like, you're not getting me. You're not fooling me. I know you're up to something. They kind of react with guarded suspicion or even hostility. Whereas you go to Liverpool and ask the same question about Liverpool's manager, boom, you're just like, yabba, yabba, yabba. In fact, we had this very funny moment where we were filming a story in Liverpool. And the story was about a young lad. He was only 18 years old. And he was standing for election for the local council. And the story was, look, an 18-year-old is running in local politics. It's normally, people in their 50s and 60s. And so we followed this guy round as he was canvassing, knocking on doors in his area of Liverpool. And we were walking up behind him with the camera rolling as he's knocking on people's doors. And he knocked on this door. Door opens. This woman answered the door. And he said, "Hello, madam. I'm here to canvass your vote for the local election. I'm standing as a candidate." And she said, "How old are you?" And this lad said, "I'm 18. And she went, "18? I've got fish fingers in my freezer that's older than you." Anyway, it's a kind of stereotype, but there's something in it. People in Liverpool are wittier and funnier and faster and sharper, not because it's like, genetic advantage, because that's the culture they've kind of grown up in. A mixture of Irish and Welsh, transatlantic influences from America. Okay. It's a bigger city, there's more vibrancy. You go to a small town or a small city like Preston and you don't get it. And people are more guarded in small towns. You get down to village level and people are very guarded about what they say to strangers. Okay. So, doing a vox pop in Preston or a small town or a small village, nightmare. Doing it in a big city, much, much easier. Now, what does that tell you if you're wanting to talk to strangers? Now, why am I talking about talking to strangers? Well, because when you're trying to talk to your customers, trying to get information from your customers, chances are you're talking to strangers. Okay, so what can you learn from what I had to learn as a journalist about getting strangers to open up to you? Well, here's 3 things I learned. 3 little tricks I learned when you stop a stranger in the street and ask them to talk. In case you think I'm knocking people from Preston, I'm not. In fact, I want to share with you a line from the novel All Quiet on the Western Front, which gave me a bit of inspiration for this piece. This is a novel about a German soldier serving on the Western Front and the horrors that he went through as part of trench warfare. And he said when he got leave, he'd go home to see his family. And the last thing he would talk about with them were the horrors of the trenches. And the last thing his mother would talk about with him was her fear that he was going to die. And he said it like this. He said, "We have never been a very demonstrative family. Poor people who have to work hard and cope with problems rarely are. And they don't like going on about things that are perfectly obvious. Okay, so that's interesting. So when I'm stopping people in the street as a journalist trying to talk to them about, I don't know, the state of the economy or whatever, it's they're struggling with stuff and it's perfectly obvious to them that they're struggling. So why would they go on about it? Because nothing's going to change anyway. Okay, so bearing all that in mind, that's why it's all quiet on the Preston front. What can you do about it? Okay, so there are 3 tricks that I learned as a journalist that can really get people talking. First one is, see if you can get people to talk among friends. So the minute you turn up and you point a camera or a microphone at someone, it's a one-to-one, yeah, and they're thinking, who is this person? What's the trick here? What's going on? What do I need to be aware of? But if you get them talking to friends while you're listening, okay, that's fantastic because they're much more unguarded when talking to someone, yeah, they know. And you're just listening in and maybe asking the odd question now and again to get them, what do you guys think of this? But plural. Okay. Second thing, see if you can ask indirect questions. One of the big political issues in the northwest of England and frankly everywhere else in the UK was the issue of Brexit. It was a divisive, 50-50 roughly, divisive opinion. And as in with all sort of political subjects, people don't like often expressing political opinions in case they offend somebody. So rather than stopping someone in the street and saying, why did you vote for, whether it's the Labour Party, Conservative Party, Leave, Remain, whatever, why did you vote for this person? Immediately puts them into a defensive position. The indirect question is, why do you think people around here vote Leave or Remain or Labour or Conservative? People round here, people like you. Why do people round here, people like you, vote this way? And that kind of gives people almost like a defensive layer. They can say, well, people around here think, right? What they really mean is I think. Yeah? People like me think, well, I think. But you're giving them a kind of get out. You're giving them a little defensive layer behind which they can speak the truth. The last little trick is, rather than talking about things that are, get them to imagine things that are not. So people don't like going on about things that are perfectly obvious. Okay, so for example, I would be talking to somebody about poverty and food banks, the use of food banks. And so rather than saying, why is this food bank really important? Well, it's going to get an obvious answer, if any answer at all. What would you do if the food bank wasn't here? Oh, right, okay. Now then the passion, the insight really comes out. So flip it. Rather than talking about the thing that exists, what would it be like if that thing didn't exist? Again, see what happens. So those are little tricks that I used as a journalist to get people to open up. I think they're useful as well if you're talking to customers, to get them to open up. Because otherwise they're just going to tell you obvious stuff that you know already, or they're just not going to talk to you at all. So the tricks are, get them talking among friends and you listen in, first trick. Secondly, give them a protective cover. Yeah, people like you, people round here. That gives them a protective layer to talk about themselves. Thirdly, flip it. Don't talk about the thing that is. Imagine if it wasn't. These are just useful tricks. See what happens when you apply them to talking to your customer to get them to tell you their story.